Okay, so welcome to Cobra's booth at Demo Day. We're here with Tom Olsavsky, who's the Vice President of R&D with Cobra Puma Golf. So thank you for having us.
Great.
Really excited to get the product in soon to the studio. But we want to give our clients, our viewers, a little bit of an insight into the step change from LTD last year into the new Aerojet products, and kind of actually from Cobra's side, what are you guys looking for as a progression? I mean, what marks a good progression from a product point of view, rather than just, okay, there's the product that we see, but there's so much else that goes on behind the scenes to get to that point. I guess one of the things that we've noticed in the studio, particularly with the drivers, is there's almost like an extra gear once you get to a certain speed. And does an association with a certain very long hitting guy have anything to do with that?
Right.
So I throw loads of questions.
No, that's good. That's a lot there,
Yeah.
Simon. Appreciate that, and we'll try and give you guys a good insight into that. You know, our challenge is we want to get performance for the golfer in every way. If everything is out there, golfers want everything. They want speed, distance, forgiveness, accuracy, playability, feel, sound, everything. So we're trying in all those areas to improve the product. So every year our goal is, how can we make it better, especially when we target individual players.
Yeah.
And what you're going to see with Aerojet is a kind of a key lead off of the name being very aerodynamic. It's even more aerodynamic than LTD last year. And so that was something we worked with Bryson and Kyle and a number of our players that we use for these testings to say, how can we get more speed?
Yeah.
What is out there? People often comment, well, you can't make the club any faster because you have rules, right? Well, the rules that the USGA and the R&A give us are rules about speed off the face.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily going to limit us in some ways to aerodynamic speed. That's club speed. If you get club speed, if you can get 1 mile an hour club speed, you get 1.5 miles an hour ball speed.
Yeah.
So we know there's distance there if you can get a faster club. So we believe with Aerojet, we've got the fastest driver in the market from a swing speed perspective because of the aerodynamics. LTDX LS last year was one of the fastest clubs. It's even faster than that. So that's really the key story behind Aerojet. There's a number of other little things that we've done as well. We've changed the face construction. We've added something in called the Power Bridge that's a little different from what we had last year with the LTDs. So we're getting more speed, more flexibility around the face, around the structure of the head. All those things give better performance, especially when we know with golfers, you probably hit it off center more than you hit it on center if you're an amateur.
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah. And you mentioned the Power Bridge, and that's a frame behind the face that. So I'll get one on the head.
Right.
Soon.
Yep.
Now, if I'm correct, it's a frame that goes side to side behind the face.
If you look at the head, see this shape here like this, and then across. That's kind of significant of what's inside. It's not quite that big inside, but it's like that. And so what we're trying to do is spread the weight out a little bit, typically. We're also trying to free up the sole, because last year we had a little bit of stiffness there. We had another metal, we had steel in there, we bolted joint, so it's pretty stiff in here. If you make it more flexible here, it actually functions better, because then it doesn't lose any speed. So this bridge internally goes across this surface, doesn't touch the sole itself. And so that sole on the bottom is all free to flex more.
Got it.
If you can flex more, you get more speed off the low center heads. You also get a little bit different spin rate, so it goes a little further, and also spreads out the speed across the face.
And also from a structure point of view, obviously trying to free the face up to get as much overall flexion as possible. Obviously, the middle of the face is limited, but the rest of it isn't. And then the stiffness of the chassis and the frame around that, does that facilitate that face flexion and kind of making that as stable as possible, then allows you to utilize the face as much as possible?
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, really the design of these structures are very, very complex internally. But what you want to do is think of almost a tennis racket, right?
Yeah.
Tennis racket, we have a very stiff frame, we have very flexible strings.
Yeah.
So they're all metal, so it's not quite as different as a tennis racket, but that's sort of the physics idea. We do that because you kind of want to cushion the ball a little bit. If you compress the ball too much, it actually loses more energy, which means it loses speed. So you don't want to compress it, but you want to time that compression so it catches and releases the ball faster.
And one of the notable differences on Aerojet is the face.
Right.
Yeah, with the LTD there was the milled face, and so how come the move away from that? Or is it kind of, the pattern obviously is very different. Was that an aspect where there were elements of performance that you found was clearly worth changing it for, but were, so one of the things that we heard was in the wet a loss of spin. But obviously quite a drastic change having gone down that route for the last couple of models. That was very unique. So
yeah, one of the tricks is, and we talked about power bridge, the other thing we use is the power shell face. So the power shell face actually wraps around and goes into the sole.
Yeah.
And so the bridge is there to allow us to fit the power shell face into it, essentially.
Got it.
So all those things together give us more flexibility. The hard thing is it's very difficult to machine from here all the way around to there.
Yeah.
And so we felt like the cost benefit wasn't there necessarily. The performance was suffering a little bit because we wanted to get that flexible structure there. And we wanted to just kind of give it a new fresh look. You know, we had CNC milling for 5 years. You know,
as much as 5.
Yeah, so when you look at, you know, first we started with the F8, F9,
of course,
then we went into the Infinity faces after that.
Yeah.
All of them, what we thought were good improvements along the way, but we found out with this new structure we're even faster. So again, we want to get every little bit of speed we can for the golfer, especially on those miss hit shots. What we've done is had to go back in some of our processing and make sure our face radii are consistent. You know, because the milling really gave us that nicely, but we wanted to make sure our polishing was really good. We had to train some operators over in Asia that make our heads. So we spent more time on doing that to get that structure better. In the end, you're going to get more speed. We're always trying to get that golfer more speed.
Yeah. And from a material point of view, are we seeing, how quickly are we seeing advances in things like the composites, the type of metals, the alloys that you're using, you know, the what? I guess every step we learn about, you might find a happy accident here. There we go. I didn't realize that would happen. We can use that again. Yeah. How quickly does that process actually happen? Because obviously consumers see a new product every year, but how long would generally, very broad generalization, how long would a head like this take from concept to production?
Yeah, so that's a good question. When you think about the design, I would say the commercial product, it takes us about 2 years from start to get it to the market.
Got it.
A large part of the end of that is the manufacturing, shipping, assembly, all that stuff. So from an R&D standpoint, we are kind of hands-off with about 6 months left to go.
Okay.
So we kind of finish in June. They start making all the products. We're monitoring that to make sure they're making what we want. But in general, we're moving on and making production. So, but it's about that 2-year time frame. But some of the technologies are even more studied in advance.
Yeah.
So for instance, when we were working on milled face, that was probably a year in sort of the R&D innovation phases before it got to a business plan.
Right.
So a lot of these technologies we're continually working on a number of different aspects, not tied to a commercial program, but sort of in a research mode.
Got it.
So in terms of materials, now what we've done in this case, this carbon fiber structure and layup is a little bit thinner, therefore a little bit lighter. So we're saving even more weight. So whenever you can save weight, then you can put it down low into these other structures that you really want. So it's a little bit thinner. We about 15% thinner. We save another couple grams.
Yep.
Put it down low. That took a couple years to test that, to figure out if it's going to be durable, to see how it sounds.
Yeah.
There is a flexion rule, so you can't actually compress these heads. You have to be sort of solid. When you think of solid, think of a wooden club.
Yeah. Okay.
The rules were set up a long time ago. It's like we don't want these things to be flexible.
Yeah.
So there is some rules around that we have to monitor. Materials are the same way. When you think of titaniums as well, we look at those a number of years in advance. There's a lot of testing in between making clubs, durability testing. We actually have an air cannon that shoots balls at the head continually. You know, so we try and get 3,000 hits, and so we go through a number of iterations. We do a number of computer simulations on the thicknesses, the materials, the processes, and then you go make parts. Because all the simulations are great, but when you get in the manufacturing world, sometimes you don't get what you want. So we have to work on those in advance. So a lot of these things are many years in advance of even that commercial pipeline.
How many grams saving? How many grams makes a difference in terms of to see a tangible where you go, yeah, that's enough? Is it? And you said it's a couple of grams in the crown. There's inevitably weight saving in the sole there. How much does it take to make a real difference?
Yeah, so if you think about these designs, you know, when we have the movable designs, I'll get the LS here. If you think of the LS, this club is actually a 12 and a 3 weight. Okay, so that's only about a span of about 3 inches. If you move those, you'll see a difference. That's a 9-gram delta. So 9 grams, you'll see a pretty big difference. When we look at the structures, as we talk about, we're trying to get the golfer everything we can. So let's say we can have something to get you a 1/4 mile-an-hour ball speed. Now, if we tested with that, you may not see it, the golfer may not see it, but we could find it on a robot or another simulation. So we would want to put that in there because a quarter mile an hour is faster than not a quarter mile an hour.
Yeah.
And so if we add up a couple quarters, we have speed in the end. So
Yeah.
the end of the day is every year we got to make them beat last year's drivers, which is challenging.
I was
It
going to
gets
say,
more
it must
challenging
be
every year.
tougher every single year, yeah.
But our challenge is, hey, we got to continue to give
Yeah.
performance, ball speed, sound and feel are really important. You know, so that's the other thing when you
Agreed.
think about the structure, where now you have a structure that even sounds a little bit more solid.
Yeah.
Still explosive, but solid. So all those things are important and things we study every day.
And is that where the you know, the different machine, different tool, different materials? It feels like we're now at a point where the designers are able to use the faces differently from a flighting and a spin control point of view, rather than just, okay, I guess you're going way back. We go low forward equals low spin, low back equals more forgiving, a bit more spin. Actually using the structure of the frame of the head, the materials where they are in the head to facilitate the stability, but then the face to control spin now that we're that much more consistent across the face now.
Right, yeah. So part of that PowerShell face is we have what is called hot face technology, which we had last year, but we're adding to that. That's 15 locations on the inside of the face that are pads we can vary.
Right.
So if we design the head and it comes out, you know, in the computer analysis says we got to thicken pad number 14 and skinny up pad number 2, we can go do that pretty easily. So we're looking continually at every aspect to say more speed around the face, still maintaining within the rules, but more speed around the face. Same thing with center of gravity and weighting, and you know, the way the carbon piece is assembled into the head is also another function, and a technical function of how do you bond this carbon piece into the head, keep it in there. So we work on all those bonding methods. How big is the lip underneath there to hold that piece? All those are things we work on continually.
Again, smaller lip, weight saving. And how do you bond them, I guess, for viewers watching, in terms of what's to bond the different materials together? What process do you use? What
Typically,
kind of adherence do you use?
They're bonded together with glues. And so composites don't get bolted to things. If we know a little bit about composites, you don't put bolts through composites, right? Not like metals, you can't weld it. But what we do is we glue them. Now, the interesting thing is when you look at industries and technology, think about adhesives technology. It's grown by leaps and bounds over the years. Now, if you don't deal with adhesives, you don't really see these improvements. But almost every airplane you're flying on that's made with lots of composite panels, they're bonded together with glues. You know, 3M is one of the strong companies in the world that makes these. They're VHB type glues or adhesives or bonds to hold things together. The benefit of carbon fibers and panels like that is you have a lot of surface area. So if you take a big surface area, for instance, on a wing or a body part of an airplane, you could bond the whole thing. So it's glued all the way along it. With drivers, it's a little different because we're only bonding around the ledges, but different service conditions. But there's glue in there. To hold the piece.
And there's got to be, I mean, we've seen it with drying times for the epoxies. We use 3M for assembling our clubs, and the bad old days of 12 or 24-hour drying times. But they've got to have given them. You can't just hard bond something when the head's mobile, when the whole head's moving.
Right. Yeah. When you have an impact there, these things are moving. They're flexing a little bit. So you want the bond to be subtle, but also strong enough to hold things together. And we do those same kind of durability tests where thousands of hits, different conditions, different variations, different production variations, all that to make sure the head holds up in the life for the golfer.
And transmitting, I guess, would historically have started some of the tech they use in driver heads then filter through to fairways. As you've got to look at them, you've got to design them differently because they're doing different jobs. But what sort of direction does it generally take? Is it sort of a primary focus on driver tech that then you can extrapolate out and use the other different metal woods? Yeah,
so it's interesting if you think about, for instance, PowerShell, this wraparound face structure. We actually been using it on our irons for 5 years. We're using a hybrid for 4 years. So we've done it in other structures before we were able to do it with a driver. Part of the challenge with the driver was it's titanium. Those other products were steels. There's different welding techniques you have to worry about, different structures. So sometimes the technologies can flow from other categories into drivers or vice versa. When we think about our team, we're looking at all the clubs at the same time. Every year we're launching a number of new clubs. And same thing with our innovation team, looking in advance. So how can we make those joints better, the materials better, the bonds better? And we look at multiple materials. So metals, particularly in terms of the woods, but as well with the carbons. And then when you get into things like putters, we're looking at nylons and plastics and a number of other features, a number of materials to get better performance.
Yeah,
we don't really leave any stone unturned from a material standpoint.
And that's something I think, particularly with Cobra, that we've seen using the composites in the back of the iron heads. Certainly, if not more, certainly more than other brands. I think that material going into the printed designs on the putters, things like that. I think Cobra's always been a company that's not been afraid of going out there and going there where others may be a little bit less inclined to from a kind of safe bet point of view. I think that's something that I feel Cobra's always been very innovative in how it's moved forward with the products.
Yeah, well, Tom Crow, our founder, who came over from Australia, was always an innovative thinker. Very good golfer, a very successful golfer in his day. But always the company has an innovative mindset. And we feel like our position in the marketplace, we can't really rest a lot on our laurels like maybe some of the bigger companies can. We have to be aggressive and kind of break new ground. So a lot of times you'll see us do things that other companies aren't willing to do.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, as futile, sort of minimal colours, just going there big, the identity. I think Cobra's always had an identity that has very much been their own. I mean, someone say once you've been allowed to have your own identity, post one kind of joining. But I think, you've always had such a great history from back to the old King Cobra days. Tiger winning the Masters with the King Cobra driver in '97. Greg Norman being such an ambassador over the years. So I mean, one of the products that would be nice to have a very brief chat about, if you don't mind, is I think we're really excited this year at where the irons are, and I'll get a few of these out. For example, the Forge Tech X is the Forge Tech that we've had in this last season have been great.
Right.
The one I'm particularly, having had a very brief hit with, I'm particularly excited about this head. I think we had half an hour with them, so the sensation of ball spin, I think the blend and the way the heads go through, I'll just hold those up for James there to the camera. The way the heads actually match through, I think they really lend themselves to utilising the technology in whichever bit of the set you need to progress the ball speed on or progress the flight profiles.
And one of these things we've seen with the Tour Iron, which has really been fun, is Ricky Fowler's playing these now.
Yeah.
And Rick has turned 30, and his feedback was, I find when I hit this and I have a little miss hit versus a pure blade, the miss hit goes a little farther. This design is a little bit of a taking out the material here, spreading it out. It's still a player's blade, but it's got better forgiveness than a traditional muscle back or traditional cavity back.
And so how much, and with that obviously we've got the, so the camera can see there's that in the back, which is a
TPU.
TPU polymer to sound, feel, lighter weight.
It's essentially to take the weight out of the middle and spread it out a little bit. Now this is not we wouldn't call this a flexible face because it's still relatively stiff there, but the cutout is there to spread the weight just a little bit further apart. And Rick has said, hey, I want a little more forgiveness. I have to hit these shots and I want to get them on the green. I don't want my miss hit to be 7 yards short. Now with the miss hit with these, it's only 2-3 yards short.
I think that's fascinating seeing other than the guys like Rory who are the very best ball strikers as well are still playing with things like that, but actually how many of the tour players, whatever company they're playing, are going to heads, even if it's just in the top half of the set, because it's help. Why make it harder than it needs to be? Says a guy who's still playing blades for most of his set.
And we're working with Bryson as well. Bryson has played a blade of this style in our history. We have to make the one-link version, but he'll probably go into that blade as well. And so, two of our top guys are playing the King Tour irons.
And I think there's such a tradition. It's the traditional shape. I guess that's one of the difficult things from a design point of view. Must be integrating the designs and the materials and the progressions you want to, but keeping the visuals where the pretty heads that the consumer wants to see as well.
Right. Yeah. We do spend a lot of time on that, Simon. We know that golfers are aspirational. They want their clubs to look great. So part of that, from a design ethos, is how do we make this new family look? It's a new family look for us. We want to do some things, and you can see here where there's a weight pad here a little bit. We want the CG to be centered, so we put a little bit of a weight pad there and signify that through the designs. And it gives us a nice, clean, fresh look. I think when golfers get new clubs, they fall in love with them. So you want them to be beautiful.
You've got to look forward to using them. I'm really so grateful for your insights today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed some of the insights and getting the background to how some of these products develop. It's always a pleasure to have time with someone like yourself. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks. We're glad to be here and talk with you.